Hey, Scott from Aristocob.com here.
And Seth from theshrinkingpastor.com.
And Cal from Denver.
And together this week, the four of us, and that includes you, we are Markwood Men's Breakfast Club. And we literally started with breakfast today. That's so unusual. But we are here in Littleton, Colorado, and hanging out with my folks and some local family. And we thought, can't miss this opportunity to talk to my dad again on camera. And our prompt for this was we were discussing some of the comments and questions that have been posted on past videos where we've had you. And we thought we would let you answer those questions and respond to those comments here live. He's also jumped on to the conversations a few times, but you know, you're not much of a YouTube hanger-outer, right?
Right.
So right off the bat, many comments were about your service to the country. Would you mind talking about that?
I would just say I appreciate very much the comments that a lot of you made. When I came back from Southeast Asia in 1967, America was not very supportive of the Vietnam War, and probably still aren't in a lot of ways. And so we didn't get very many thank yous, or we didn't get many you know, thank you for your service and so forth. I get a lot of that today. On my car, I have a sticker on the back, U.S. Air Force retired sticker on one side. On the other side, I have one, a U.S. Marine sticker for our grandson, who's in the Marines right now, stationed overseas. And as I park different places, I get notes stuck in the windshield wipers saying, thank you for your service. A lot of people who are probably vets also have cards printed up, and they just dole them out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that's real cool.
That is cool.
And I appreciate it. So thank you, one and all, for your loyalty. I realize that many of you either former service members yourself or your fathers were, and a lot of this comes from that. So I understand it, and it's great.
Very good. All right, now this is an interesting question. In starting off, the guy's name on YouTube is the Pipeless Piper, which I'm not sure how he pulls that off, unless he just packs the tobacco in and does that. His question was, as someone who has never picked up smoking a pipe, and you've never smoked at all, right?
No.
Anything?
No.
Chicken? But no tobacco, and,
No.
and you're here in Colorado where other things are legal to smoke.
That's true.
You've not smoked those things either.
Yes, I've not.
The question was, what are your thoughts on your son, me, picking up the hobby?
Well, that's a complicated one. You know, as fathers grow older and their sons grow up and become their own people, they pick up their own habits. And
Wait, it was hobby, not habit.
And hobbies, the habits and hobbies. And fathers have to kind of be careful in correcting their sons and in allowing them to do what they do. I grew up in a very strict Christian home, a strict Baptist home, and there were a lot of thou shalt nots that were in practice there. And so I grew up not smoking, not being around anybody in my family that smoked, or drink, or
you never grew your facial hair, and I think
cussed.
Part of that now is because of your preference for having a clean shaven face. But wasn't there a time where that was, you know, frowned upon in your social circles and at home? Or?
No, not that I recall. The only facial hair, go back to Air Force and flying 105s and so forth. You had to keep most of your face pretty clean shaving to fly with the oxygen mask. In Vietnam especially, a lot of the fighter pilots found it cool to grow a mustache. And they grew the fancy handlebar mustaches, and some were good and some were not so good, but to each his own. It never entered my mind to grow a mustache or a beard. It just, clean shaven is the way I've always been.
You know, this is No Shave November right now.
Not for me.
I know. I noticed the hair on your legs. So you let that go.
That's still there.
Okay, Ralph Burns asked, do you have any interest in visiting Vietnam now, or Thailand, for that matter?
Not really.
Okay, why? Or why not?
It just doesn't appeal to me. I don't know. I guess there's some leftover hard feelings from the war, from the way it was prosecuted, the difficulty we had in being allowed to try to bring it to a meaningful conclusion. We being the fighter pilots, okay, or the military in general.
Why is Thailand part of the question? I think is important too.
Yeah, I was based in Thailand, and I enjoyed Thailand very much while I was there. I wouldn't mind going back to and visiting Thailand. We haven't done any real world traveling, either before or after my retirement, and I wouldn't object to going, but it's not something that I would go out of my way and spend an awful lot of money to.
Are there other places higher on the list?
Yeah, there are other places that are higher on the list.
Yeah. Amsterdam?
Europe.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, Jimmy Cricket 61258. Do you think there's that many Jimmy Crickets on YouTube? Is it a zip code? He asked, what is your opinion of the Roswell UFO incident, and have you ever had any unusual encounters of your own?
No, I've not had any unusual encounters, and I think so little of that whole UFO hullabaloo that I don't waste any more time thinking about it. So sorry if I disappointed you.
So what you're saying is you've seen it all and it just doesn't interest you? You've seen the little men and everything?
No, I've seen enough to convince me that there are no little men.
Well, yeah, some of the things about your experience, like with the F-105, I'm sorry, the F-16, second in command of the X-16 program, we were flying some of those things out west long before we let anybody know that we were flying that technology, or flying stealth bombers and stealth fighters. All that was done under the cloak of darkness, and somebody camping out in the mountains may very well have been seeing us flying over, right?
Yeah, the descriptions of what they think they saw are so far from what we've learned was going on there.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, that just.
So you think there's hallucinogens involved or something?
I think there's a lot of fantasy.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
No offense.
Scooter OMG said, "I don't see extra bombs on the wings. That's fuel." That was a picture that you showed, and you mentioned in your commentary about that.
Scooter, you made me go back through the whole hour of that video and watch it to see what I said. And I think I said it right, but just to make it real clear, we had two basic configurations that we flew. One was fuel tanks on the inboard pylons. We had two pylons on each wing, an inboard one and an outboard one. The inboard one was the heavy-duty one, and we would typically carry a 450-gallon tank on each of those two pylons, and on the center line of the airplane we'd carry a multiple ejector rack with 6 bombs, and the 6 bombs could be 750-pound bombs or 500-pound bombs. Sometimes we carried cluster bomb units on that, and we could only carry 5 of them because it was a little bit bigger and the back one would drag on takeoff. So that was one configuration. The other configuration was when we carried 3,000-pound bombs on those pylons, and we'd carry then a 650-gallon tank on the belly of the airplane. So we carried them both ways, fuel on the wings, bombs on the center, or fuel in the center and bombs on the wings. We also had a fuel tank in a bomb bay of the airplane. You may or may not be aware of it, but if you've looked at the videos of the 105, you know that it was designed to be a nuclear strike fighter, and it had a bomb bay in it that could carry a nuclear weapon. We carried extra fuel in that, and we used that as our get-home fuel in case we got involved in a serious air-to-air battle and ran out of gas. I mentioned the other pylon. Each wing had a smaller pylon on the outer part of the wing, and it could carry a bomb, but we never did. We would carry a sidewinder on a pylon on one side, and we'd carry a jamming pod, a radar jamming pod on the pylon on the other side.
All right, remember my question or comment.
I knew we'd get back.
I put on the video where we were showing your PowerPoint presentation, I added basically the PowerPoint presentation and the video and the voiceover, and it got out of sync a little bit.
No.
And I'm wondering if there was a point where you were talking about a picture that was either before or after what was showing. Because you have one picture that shows the plane with the wings kind of shot out.
Yes.
And you were talking about that at a different point in the PowerPoint. So that may be on me, but you're saying that when you described the plane that was sitting there on the runway and how it was configured, that was what you were talking about. Okay. We're gonna ask one more thing, and then we're gonna wrap this up. We have things going on here today, and we'll shoot another part of this later, if that's all right with you. All right. So one thing I want to make sure we talk about, there's a gentleman named Shrike 2000 who left some comments and then actually got in touch with you, or you got in touch with him. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. He said that his father, I had a photograph in one of the videos of John Rim, who was the guy that I flew my night two-place airplane missions with, and I getting out of a swimming pool. John had just finished his 100 missions and had consumed about 2/3 of a gallon of champagne in about 15 minutes, and got thrown in the pool, which was part of the
in his flight gear and everything.
In his flight gear, yeah. I was thrown in with him because I was his partner flying. And so Shrike 2000 wrote to me and said, you know, that other guy was my dad, and he lives in San Antonio now, and gave me the name of the facility that he lives in. So last spring, I got in touch with the son and found out where his dad was, and he gave me that information. Last spring, my wife and I were in San Antonio visiting her brother and sister-in-law, and so I looked up John and found that he was there, and we spent a nice afternoon and evening with him and had a good time.
This is 50 years later.
50 years later. I had not seen John or heard from him in that 50 years, so that was a real treat.
This is the value of YouTube, right? We finally found it.
Well, let's talk about that other contact.
Yeah. All right, another gentleman, Bama Boy Fedor. He also reached out, and same situation. We connected you guys via email.
Yeah.
And what happened there?
Well, I got in touch with him, found out that his dad had been over there, discovered that he was there the same time I was in the latter half of 1967 when I was flying Day Strike. He was not in he was at the same base I was, but not in the same squadron. So I didn't know him. I mean, we had 3 squadrons, and you didn't know everybody by name. When I found out what squadron he was in, I realized that a friend that I had over there, lifelong friend, had been in that squadron at that time. So I got in touch with him, and he says, "Yeah, I not only I not only knew him, but he says I was in the mission with him when he was hit and just barely made it back to a base in South Vietnam to land, and was very badly injured. Had to be lifted out of the airplane with a hoist, and." So then I was able to put him in touch with Eric, and the other guy's son lives in Nashville where Eric does, and so they've made contact. So shows the value of this.
Yeah, and he's also a musician. He ended up sharing some music with us.
Yeah.
I mean, it again, more connections. That's crazy. All right, we will stop this, and we'll shoot another episode of this, or maybe we'll tack it on. You'll know if it looks like there's more video that apparently we tacked it onto this one. Seth is saying no, separate video.
There'll be another video.
Let's give Seth something to talk about.
We'll continue these questions a little bit later today, and you'll see those in an upcoming video, part 2 Q&A, follow up to previous conversations with Colonel Calvin Markwood.
All right.
Actually, there is another one I want to talk about.
Wait. We'll do it later. We'll get to it. All right. We'll see you next week. Make it a great week.
Bye.